And if I just say, it is a great pleasure to see so many people joining today's BSA Friends lecture. Welcome, everyone. My name is Yorgos Moratidis, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Brit School at Athens, or the BSA, as we often refer to it. So if for any reason you are unfamiliar with our school, we are a UK-based charity whose objective is to conduct, facilitate, and promote research in Greece in all periods and across all arts and humanities and social sciences disciplines. And we do this from a main base in Athens, from a smaller satellite research center at Knossos on Crete, as well as an office in London. Now, Flora, my colleague, will put a link of our website in the chat, which I strongly recommend that you visit and explore all of the wonderful things we do. And I also encourage you to consider signing up to our mailing list to receive information about our activities, including future events like this one. And of course, perhaps to consider becoming one of our supporters. It goes a very long way. And now, before I hand over to Nigel Spencer, Chair of the Friends Committee, just a couple of things that will help ensure the event will run smoothly. So don't worry about being seen or heard other than the speaker, and hosts, all microphones are off by default. And throughout the talk, you have two features available: a chat feature that looks like two speech bubbles, one on top of the other, which allows you to type text, which can be read by the speaker and host. And you can use this if you experience an issue. Perhaps my co-host Flora can assist. There's also the Q&A feature, into which we can type questions for the speaker. And through that, only you and the speaker and the host can see these. So after the lecture finishes, Nigel will read out a selection of questions received, and our speaker will be asked to respond. So you also should see a small window in top right of your screen. If this gets into your way, you can mouse over it and either move it around your screen, or you can click on the bars above it to make it smaller. And yes, I think that's it. I hope it's clear, but the Q&A protocol will be repeated at the end of the lecture, so don't worry if you've missed something. And I'm very looking forward to the lecture. And Nigel, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Yorgos, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, whatever time it is in Ottawa. It's probably just after midday, isn't it? But anyway, whatever time of day you're dialing in from, welcome to the lecture. My name is Nigel Spencer. I was formerly a student at the school, as we're all called students at the school, back in the 80s when I was doing my research in Greece on all around Lesbos and Mytilene, and then worked a bit on the area opposite in the mainland of Asia Minor. So pleasure to be here. I now chair the Friends Committee, which it's a pleasure to do. And this series of lectures, this is the next in the series that's been put together by the team there. Mary Christine, Keith, I know you've done a lot of work putting the lecture series together. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. So what do we do as the Friends Committee? Well, we're a committee that organise things such as the lecture series, also trips to Greece, and also other events such as we had the wine tasting in October as well. So we do some events linked to Greece. So it was a Greek wine tasting with a lecture there as well. So our aim is to support the school. The school needs all of our support. It's a research centre, and hence, you know, as you've mentioned, Yorgos, as well, you can always help by becoming a supporter or by making a donation for each of the lectures. And thank you, Flora, for just pasting in the chat there. Flora's just pasted how you can donate to us as well. So just to say, you know, I was very fortunate to benefit from the school all those years ago, and you know, all of us, I'm sure, in some ways, those of us who've been linked to the school and are dialed in today, you know, a small donation really helps in a big way to support all the work that Yorgos and Rebecca and the team do at the school. It's immensely valuable. It helps the students, it helps the next generation coming through be able to benefit from all the things that we were fortunate enough to have as well. So all your support would be gratefully received. Thank you. And just apart from just introducing about the Friends, just, you know, just to say how grateful we are that we've got Professor Edward Harris with us this afternoon to give us this talk. You can see the title of the talk on the screen. And Edward is an emeritus professor at Durham University as well. And you may know, I'm sure many of you do know, he's published really, really widely on this whole area sort of economic history, Greek and Greek law. Just to pick out, Edward, you reminded me of some of your key works. One on your two books, Democracy and the Rule of Law in Classical Athens, so Essays on Law, Society and Politics, was one of your very important books, along with the later book, The Rule of Law in Action in Democratic Athens as well. And this is, all these subjects are very close to my heart now. My career's moved on and I now have worked in the legal sector for the past 20 or 30 years. So that whole area of economy law and the ancient world is something that I see the links between as well. And also, Edward, your three recent edited volumes as well. One about the ancient economy, markets, households and city-states, skilled labour, and also the destruction of cities in the ancient Greek world as well. So you're a very widely respected author on all of these areas of expertise. So we're so fortunate to have you here this afternoon. Thank you so much for offering to give the talk, which is, as we can see on the slides, is a new approach to the Attic countryside, markets in the Demes. So Edward, without further ado, I'll put myself on mute and close my video, and over to yourself, and I'll pop back at the end and we can do the Q&A. But thank you very much.
Okay, good. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nigel, for that kind introduction. I'd like to also thank the British School for its invitation, and I'd also like to again second Nigel's request. You can see the Donate Now button at the top, and please press that when you get a chance. Rebecca and has been doing a fantastic job down here at the school, organizing a series of lectures and conferences, and also with her help from George. And I'm very honored to also to participate in this really wonderful series of talks that the British School has been putting on. Before I start the talk, however, I must stress that this is very much a joint work. This is something that Sylvain Fachard and I have been working on and off for about the last 5 years. My collaborator with the Destructions volume, and he was the one who put the PowerPoint together. So if you're impressed by the PowerPoint, all the praise should go to him. And we hope to actually be kind of submitting a joint article sometime in the next month or two. Okay, let us begin. Let's see now. Wait a minute. Okay, good. In Aristophanes Acharnians, Dikaiopolis expresses his nostalgia for the good old days in the Attic countryside when no one ever used the word buy and the land produced everything he needed. Now, this passage has been used by late Moses Finlay and also Tom Gallant as evidence that the market played only a peripheral role in the lives of Greek farmers. This assumption has also led scholars like Astrid Möller and Möller and Osborne that there were no evidence for markets outside Athens, the Piraeus and Laurion. Now, this view about the absence of markets in the countrysides obviously been influenced by the idea of the German sociologist Max Weber that the ancient city was a consumer city and that most farmers in the countryside lived at subsistence level. The relation between the city and the countryside was parasitic, with the city drawing rents and taxes from the countryside and contributing little to the countryside in return. In this scenario, the market was at best peripheral. Now, this view has also been shaped by the predominant status of the city of Athens as a center of power and economic activity. It also reflects the view of the predominance of the urban pole, the asti, over the hora, which in a typical relationship of exploitation would only exist to serve the city's needs. This approach also represents biased views of the city and its territory. On the one hand, an asti supposedly composed of urban citizens and landowners who could walk to their fields, and then also a chora made up of supposedly isolated farmsteads and small farming communities living on autarky. Such models perhaps function to some extent in the smaller polis of 100 square meters where borders could be reached within a 2-hour walk, but certainly not in Attica with its 2,400 square kilometers and its complex settlement patterns composed of at least 100 rural demes. Now, in the past 20 years or so, our view of the Greek economy and the Athenian economy in particular has dramatically changed. In a book that I published with David Lewis, Mark Wolmer, contains 17 contributions, and also in the path-breaking book by Alain Bresson, which was translated into English in 2016, we now have a completely different view of the ancient Greek economy and now recognize that markets played a very large role. We must be, of course, very careful in distinguishing different types of markets, as we talk about in our book. We must distinguish local markets, regional markets, and interregional markets, but there's no question that the market played a much larger role. In that book, and in Bresson's book, they looked mainly actually at the markets in the center of the polis and also in written regional trade. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slightly change the perspective tonight and look at a phenomenon which has not been received the attention I think it deserves, and that's the role of markets again in the countryside. Now, recent excavations by the Greek Archaeological Service have brought to light several deme agorae in the Mesogaea and the mining district, and the evidence has been well summarized by Olga Kakvogianni and Michalis Anetakis. Now, in our paper, we increased this list to about 19 agora, including several on the borders of Attica, based on this new evidence. And we brought up a list of features that constitute the archaeological signature of regional agorae. You see, this is our new map. I'm going to add another one actually at the end of our list. These agorae form large complexes composed of open spaces or courtyards, sometimes delimited by walls and surrounded by buildings, and in some cases a stoa. Rooms are often used for storage, cooking, and in some cases craft activities. One might point out that these features are often commonly found in houses and large farmsteads. Yes, indeed. But agorae display another material profile that houses lack, the presence of weights and measures, as well as foreign coins. Agorae also include shrines and are therefore multifunctional spaces, allowing the administrative and economic activities of the deme to take place. We also are going to show that regional markets were significant exchange centers, easily accessible and well connected, thanks to an efficient road network that allowed the quick movement of goods throughout Attica. Okay, good. Moreover, by connecting regional agorae, roads, demes, harbors, and loci of agricultural exploitation on GIS, and this is all Sylvian's contribution, we use spatial analysis to show that each market had its own catchment region, acting as a centripetal force for surrounding demes. While these regional markets boosted regional trade and production, they were also connected to the Athenian agora, and thus creating a more complex and multifaceted web of exchange between the city and its countryside than previously thought. Overall, instead of seeing a dichotomy between Asti and Chora, we support the vision of a fluid city-countryside continuum with a more diffuse network, of secondary settlements, exchanges, and markets, forming an interaction of systemic interdependence. Now, we'll now kind of present the markets in Athens outside the main agora. There's the main agora, of course, and the center of agora at Kolytos, Kidathaneion, Skambonidai, and Melitai. And we're going to have a geographical order following the main ancient axis communication within Attica. The largest market outside the Athenian agora was the Piraeus. Although the latter was connected to Athens' urban fabric, and therefore cannot be considered a rural market, it is nevertheless an agora outside Athens and deserves to be briefly mentioned. During the development of the Piraeus after Salamis, an exceptional plan was designed by Hippodamus and comprised a central market known as the Hippodamian agora, the Hippodamia, the agora in the Piraeus, or the agora of the demesmen. But perhaps more important for our topic was the harbour market in the Kantharos and Emporion with its stoa, degma, money changers, and agronomoi. This is where the largest volume of imports was disembarked and sold before being transported to the Asti and the Athenian agora, as well as other agora within Attica. Okay. Now, south of Athens, on the road leading to Sounion, was the significant deme of Halai Aixonides. It has 6 bouletae and later 10, and currently situated in Vula. Now, during the excavation for construction for a supermarket, guess what they found? An ancient supermarket. The rescue excavations unearthed a large complex measuring 22 meters by 22 meters, which is bounded by walls on the east, north, and south sides. The complex comprises a courtyard measuring about 10.5 meters by 11 meters, surrounded by 12 rooms of various dimensions, which open to the courtyard. There's an entryway to the entire complex on the east side. Near the entrance is a cistern for water with a stone floor. The rooms are wide with floors of packed soil, and in places the bedrock has been smoothed to form a level surface. The walls are made of local limestone blocks assembled in a masonry characteristic of the classical period. In the middle of the western side, there appears to be a shrine with an altar where several terracotta figurines were found. One room displays kitchen facilities, perhaps a small taverna or food stand. In room 2 were found 27 bronze coins, some silver items, and a hoard of 11 bronze coins. Most of them come from commercial hubs such as Aegina, Salamis, Corinth, Megara, Hermione, and Thebes, and are dated to 390 to 300 BCE. There are 2 silver Alexanders from Colophon, dated to the 310 to 280. There's also a bronze judicial allotment ticket with the name Dionysios Halius, which helps us to identify the site, and a lead weight with an amphora in relief and the letters delta, eta, mu, omega, indicating its public nature, demotion, and perhaps a public character of the space. The other finds include fragments of cups, lamps, iron tools, nails, and loom weights. Now, this complex was on the outskirts of a loosely and widely spread settlement identified with the deme of Halai Aixonides, well known for the remains of houses, streets, and small shrines at Kalamboka. And here you see the position of the agora in relationship to the settlement, and also, as you see, it's also close to the harbor. What is interesting is that the market and the deme were connected to the coast and possible harbor at Kavori Beach, as suggested by a recent excavation by the effort of an ancient carriageable road above the beach. Therefore, the agora at Halai supported craft activities in the deme, but also connected it to neighboring demes and the city thanks to a network of carriageable roads and to cities around the Saronic Gulf through the harbor and, of course, as attested by the coins. Now, moving on to the mining district. At the southern tip of Attica were the Laurion mines, which played a crucial role in the economic development of Athens in the 5th and 4th centuries. We currently know of 5 agorae in the wider mining district, which testifies to the high level of economic volume, production, and trade. And 1 at Besa, and as you see, that's in the hills, 3 at Sounion, and 1 again at Thorikos, as you can see on the map. Now, the agora at Besa remains poorly known. Poletae records in the 4th century mention an agora in the deme of Besa. It's a small deme with only 2 members of the council, situated in the northern region of the mining district along an interior route that connected Athens to Sounion. Kakvogianni mentions an impressive building made of marble blocks, which she identifies with the deme agora. And again, I've given you a picture of that. Unfortunately, that's as much excavation has been done, and more work is going to be required. Now, the deme of Sounion, which had 4 members of the council and then later 6, is unique in that it had 3 attested agoras. The first was located on the beach at Sounion Bay, west of the fortified deme and sanctuary. An inscription mentions the usage of this small harbor, hormos, as a harbor for commercial ships and states that the ships must pay a tax to the sanctuary of Poseidon. In the 1920s, a classical building made of local Suriza marble blocks, some 50 meters in length, was discovered on the beach. Oikonomakou suggested that this building belonged to the commercial agora of the deme. Another building was found nearby behind the modern hotel. You can see the modern hotel in the picture. It is 30 by 30 meters and had an interior courtyard framed on three sides by a colonnade. Oikonomakou suggested that this building provided the political character of the deme's agora.
I'll take some water.
No, I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, all good. The construction of a new agora in the deme of Sounion is attested by an inscription, which I've given you on the slide, dating to the mid-4th century BCE. The text describes the circumstances leading to the establishment of a new agora. Because the original agora was crowded with constructions, Lucius donated a plot for constructing a new agora, 2 by 1 plethora, 60 by 30 meters, under condition that it would be protected against illegal encroachments. What's interesting here is that the amount of commerce here in Sounion is so large that it requires the construction again of another agora. The stone was found in the Suriza Valley, but its original location is unknown, somewhere between the Suriza and Agreleza. The presence of a market in the middle of the mining district makes much sense, especially when the mines were exploited at full capacity in the 5th and the 4th centuries. They were employing at least 10,000 people, if not more. The presence of a agora in the heart of the mining district, well connected and surrounded by washeries, was essential for providing tools, wood, pottery, trachyte mills, amphoras, lamps, oil, grain, charcoal, and other essential goods, not to mention, of course, enslaved people. This is, again, other pictures from the Agreleza. Now, there is also another agora has been discovered near the natural anchorage of Pasalimani, which is 4 kilometers northeast of Sounion. You see the location there. We know it must be an agora because guess what? The road sign actually says so. No, actually, we have other reasons for thinking that. Now, the complex, located 150 meters from the shore in an ancient harbor, is associated with a settlement in the area. Good. It was excavated from 1979 until 1983, and the complex's dimensions are 56 by 61 meters, with rooms on 4 sides surrounding an open central space. The entrance, marked by a marble threshold, appears to have been on the south side. Young identified this agora with the agora of the Salaminii, mentioned in a 4th century inscription, but Ferguson identified it with an agora at Sounion. The north side of the complex contains a stoa 56 meters long with 12 Doric columns, which dates to the 4th century BCE. The other 4 sides were added in the 3rd century BCE. The exterior faces of the walls are covered in plaster, and the eastern side has 8 rooms with remains of a latrine, a space for storage, and a room with a bath, a well, and a tank for warming water. Other rooms on the east side were for storage and contained storage pythoi, and the complex gradually went out of use and was abandoned by the 1st century CE. The western side of the complex has 1 room on the southern end where a rudimentary washery for metal was found with some channels for drainage. Other rooms on the side were used as workshops for lead products and iron products such as small boxes, pipes, and weights. One of the rooms was used for the manufacture of Megarian cups, and the rooms behind the stoa served as shops. Now, 50 coins were found, of which 48 were bronze. There is 1 bronze coin of Philip II, 1 Athenian bronze coin dated to the 4th century, and 10 coins dated to the 3rd century, all of which are Athenian, except for 1 of Antigonus Gonatas. There are 36 dated to the 3rd century, of which all are Athenian, except 1 from the Roman Republic. And there are 2 coins dated to the 1st century BCE. There are many other finds, and they include large quantities of Hellenistic pottery, litharge, lead objects, and iron tools and pickaxes. Perhaps most important for the archaeological signature are the discovery of 13 lead weights, of which 8 are stamped and fall into the following categories: double stater, square with a representation of a wheel, 2 squares, with a representation of two astragals, 2 staters with an astragal, a quarter of a stater with a representation of a turtle, and the half of 1/8 with the letters tau, epsilon, tau, alpha tetarton, and a round weight with the letters alpha lambda. It was probably liter from the Roman period. Now, in the early Roman period, additional spaces were added, and moreover, more were built around the agora, as well as houses associated with a dense network of drains. Now, the finds at Pasalimani established a clear link with the Laurion mines. The mining district reached its peak of production in the 4th century BCE when the agora was built. The agora was crucial for importing objects to Sounion and the Laurion region, mainly specialized iron tools, food, oil, and charcoal. Moreover, the agora was connected to a network of roads linking the harbor with Ano Sounion and the interior valleys of Suriza and Agreleza. With many 10,000 people in the area, you have really quite a market. Now, the interruption of the mining leases around 300 BCE probably led to a period of decay, but it's quite clear that it still nevertheless continued active. On the other hand, this seems to have been indicative of a decrease in activity, which has also been shown in the surveys conducted by Hans Lohmann in his in around Athene. Now, to the next one. Now, another one is another possibility is a agora at Thorikos, which played an active part in the exploitation and production of silver. The Deem Center included several mines exploited since the Bronze Age and included many washeries and workshops. Now, a deem of the importance of Thorikos, 5 to 6 members of the council, will be a natural candidate for an agora given its economic weight, the importance of its harbor, and its position within the mining district. Although epigraphic evidence is currently lacking, several scholars, especially Margaret Miles of the American School, have suggested that the famous double-faced stoa could be a part of the Deem's agora. And here I've given you the slide with the remains of this very unusual building. As you can also, though, see around, the excavation has been very, very limited. It's only been to this area, again, the base of this stoa, and one can't help but wonder what one would find if the excavations were extended into the surrounding areas. Now, what moderns call the Mesogaia represents one of the most significant fertile regions of Attica, and it's bordered by Mount Himitos to the west, and Mount Pendeli to the north, and the foothills of Panion and Merenda to the south. The region counted 20 deems in the classical period. It's about 20% of all rural deems. It was well known for its agricultural production, rolling fields, gardens, and vineyards. Now, over the last 2 decades, rescue excavation by the Greek Archaeological Service brought to light a wealth of new archaeological data. The program of public works linked to the 2004 Olympics, which saw the construction of highways, stadiums, and a new airport, has profoundly transformed our understanding of the region, provoking a data revolution. And there is a doctoral thesis on the Mesogaia by A. Brusiewicz, which includes a catalog of over 706 entries and provides a new landscape study of this region. For our topic, there are 2 and possibly 3 agoras which can be pinpointed. In the center of the Mesogaia, a large complex of about 1,000 square meters has been discovered close to the modern airport in an area that appears to correspond to the ancient Deem of Oia, along the road from Steiria and Brauron to Paeania and Athens. This complex was constructed in the middle of the 4th century BCE, integrating a small temple in the 5th century BCE. This small complex has 3 wings in the east, north, and south, with an entry on the west leading to the main road. The northern part is over an old sanctuary and continued to be used for religious purposes. On the eastern side, however, is a storeroom with pithoi. The south wing has a large courtyard with a well in the center and a stoa, which was destroyed in the Hellenistic period. A furnace, apparently for metalworking, was added later. The finds confirm the commercial function of this part of the complex. 4 commercial weights were found: a lead weight with a dolphin, a square lead weight with a tortoise, and a square lead weight depicting half an amphora, and a square weight with a representation of half a tortoise. The complex is located at the border between the demes of Oia and Erchia, apparently at some distance from the settlement cores, but on the main road between the 2 demes. This will be an important point, the fact that the relationship of these demes, these agoras also to this extensive network of roads. The complex has been identified as agora by Kakvogianni, Leonis, and Anetakis. A link with the agora mentioned in the sacred calendar of Erchia has been suggested, but this identification still needs to be confirmed. Moving on, but still again in the Mesogaia. The remarkable excavations conducted at the Hippodrome of Markopoulou in Merenda revealed extended remains of the deme of Myrrhinous, a large deme with 6 to 8 members of the council. A 4th century complex with a stoa measuring 14 by 5 meters by 4 meters, and an opening on a courtyard, was built on an earlier remains near a shrine of Zeus Fratrios. There were 2 rooms for storage, one with a floor covered by terracotta tiles, and much domestic pottery was found, along with several amphoras, some Rhodian and Cnidian, lead weights, a lead judicial ballot, and a new style tetradrachm of the 2nd century BCE. According to Kakvogianni, the complex was part of the deme's agora, which had economic and administrative functions. So he suggests it hosted the deme treasury and an local agronomion, where the seicomata and reference weights were kept, as well as the 4 deme judges in charge of small legal issues. Now, in the northern eastern part of the deme of Myrrhinous, a large complex of 500 square meters was dated to the 2nd century BCE. There are 14 rooms. On the north side was a storeroom, 23 meters by 10.5 meters. It held pithoi and amphoras. On the southwest side, there were remains of baths and latrines, with finds including pottery, bronze coins, and lead weights. There was some evidence for production of honey. Anetakis suggests that the facility serves as a transit point for goods moving from the port at Steiria on the coast to the interior of the deme and other parts of the Mesogaia. It could be what the French call a point de rupture de charge, that is, for offloading, where imported products from the port at Steiria were brought to Myrrhinous before being exchanged and redistributed through the Mesogaia and beyond. Now, the main maritime port of entry to the Mesogaia was Porto Rafti, which again you see on the map, naturally protected bay with a harbor and installations, including an ancient pier. This great harbor provided an excellent alternative to Piraeus, especially for serving eastern Attica. The deme of Steiria, which had 3 members of the council, was located on the northern part of the bay and connected to Myrrhinous, the Mesogaia, Pallini, and Athens, thanks to the Styrian Way, and you can see the road on the map, one of the most significant Attic roads. Now, a large Roman building complex with an earlier stoa was discovered at Drivila. The hypothesis of an agora has been suggested by several Greek scholars based on the plan of the building and the discovery of many coins, but additional information is needed to confirm it. Okay. The deme, we finally mentioned a possible agora in the deme of Gargetos, which was at the entry of the Mesogaia when coming from Athens, just east of Pallene. A deme decree for a theosos mentions an agora, but again, no archaeological evidence has yet been found. Now, the deme of Icarion has been identified on the west slopes of Mount Pentelegon by Arthur Milchhofer in May 1887. Augustus Merriam, the director of the American School, obtained a permit for the site, and the task was given to Carl Darling Buck, who was a student at the school. This was before he went on to study Greek dialects and make a major contribution. At this point, though, he was doing archaeology, and he excavated between January 30th to March 19th of 1888, and from November 13th to January 14th of 1889. Buck published the results of his excavation in a series of articles in the American Journal of Archaeology, but he focused mainly on the inscriptions, the sculpture, and the architectural remains. In 1948 and 1950, David Robinson published some more inscriptions found on the site. And in 1981, William Beers and Thomas Boyd, with the cooperation of the Greek Archaeological Service and Basileos Petrakos, conducted a program of cleaning and study. Now, as you can see from the plan, there are remains of several buildings in what appears to be a theatrical space. An altar is preserved, as well as a small temple with a pronaos, a cella, and possibly an aditon, which has been identified by an inscription Ikarion Topithion, which helps to identify the site. Two statue bases with reliefs of Apollo and Artemis were found nearby. The so-called theatrical area consists of a line of 6 marble throne-like seats on top of marble slabs. There are also the remains of what appears to be public buildings and an exedra with a dedicatory inscription. Now, these are clearly public buildings grouped around an open space, which strongly suggests its identification with the deme agora, a hypothesis which was supported by Kolb in his book Agora und Theater and Barbara Seelhorst in her very valuable book on agoras. Unfortunately, Buck reported only about inscriptions, sculpture, and architectural features, and Beer and Boyd examined only the stones. The essays Buck published in the late 19th century do not record pottery, coins, or commercial weights. Now, there's good evidence for the political and religious function, but we need extra work to determine the economic activities. Now, further north along the eastern Attic coast was the deme of Rhamnous, a large deme with 8 members of the council, well known for its Nemesis temple, garrison fort, and impressive remains. 2 3rd-century inscriptions mention the agora of the deme, so there's no doubt about its existence. The presence of an agora at Rhamnous, given its cosmopolitan population and its volume of economic activity, due to the presence of a garrison and a harbor, makes much sense. Now, yes, the large open space situated in the center of the fortified deme, 13 on the plan, interpreted by Petrakos as the deme agora. You see that again on the map and again with the pictures. The numismatic evidence from Rhamnous shows that the deme enjoyed many connections with places outside Attica. In Volume 5 of his very valuable publication of the excavations of Rhamnous, Petrakos lists 796 coins dating from 550 BCE to 335 CE. Out of this total, 490 are Athenian, 182 are minted by other Greek cities and kings, and 51 are Roman. As Petrakos observes, the presence of Ptolemaic coins can be explained by the Ptolemaic garrison under Patroclus. Those minted by Antigonus Gotatas can be explained in the same way. But the coins from other Greek cities clearly indicate the presence of foreign travelers who must have included merchants. Some of the most numerous are those from Chalkis, which is just across the water, 3 bronzes from the period 338 to 308, 4 from the period 290 to 273, and 14 from the period 245 to 196, with 4 from the period 180 to 146. Among the other places represented are 7 from the Thessalian koinon, and also more from the Thessalian cities, 43 coins from the Euboean League, 12 coins from Locris, and also coins from the Boeotian League, Eretria, and Charistos. Also 13 coins from Megara. Now, again, several places located further away, such as Corfu, Acarnania, Lemnos, Metapontum, Colophon, Tinos, Argos, are also represented by 1 to 3 coins. Like Halai, with cities located around the Saronic Gulf, Rhamnous was obviously connected by sea with several communities along the Euboean Gulf outside of Attica. Now, further west, along the northern borders of Attica on the slopes of Mount Parnes, we find the deme of Deceleia. The latter is well known for its role played during the final years of the Peloponnesian War, when a Spartan garrison occupied the Acropolis and blocked, among other things, the traffic of imported goods into Attica by controlling the strategic Athens-Oropos, Athens-Tanagra route, as attested by Thucydides. The deme center has been located on the Cotton von Attica, but is never systematically investigated or mapped. A deme agora is mentioned in an inscription, and moreover, the fracture decrees of the Deceleans repeatedly mention a central place in the deme where the priest shall inscribe decrees in front of an altar. This must be the deme's agora. Now, given the strategic importance of border deme along the main eastern route and its volume of commercial activity and imports, the presence of a deme agora certainly makes good sense and addresses the issue of the border agorae and border transactions in Greek polis. Luke Madsen of the American School is now studying the area. He has some ideas about the location of the agora, but again, much more work needs to be done. Good. Now, the large deme of Eleusis, it's situated on Attica's eastern border, on the main road from Megara and Isthmus, is well known, of course, for its Demeter sanctuary. And this is, again, Eleusis on the map. Fortified by the 6th century by Pisistratus, it became one of the most important demes in Attica in terms of population. 11 members of the council, political weight, prestige, urban fabric, and strategic significance. The seat of a garrison, equipped with an excellent harbor and well connected within the road network, Eleusis was a cosmopolitan hub that certainly had an agora. I'm told that it is got such a good harbor that it has recently drawn the attention of the American government and Donald Trump, who wants to use it to ship liquid gas. But I got to go back to antiquity. The first hint is found in the Attic decree about weights and measures, which mentions Eleusis as an official site for keeping weights and measures, along with Athens and Piraeus. A second hint is found in the last lines of the decree of Eleusis, honoring the Hierophant Heraclides, which states the demarch shall inscribe the decree on a stone stele and stand it in the agora of Eleusis. This is restoration, but I think there's no reason to doubt it. So again, there's no question that the agora is there. Hopefully, new excavations around the sanctuary will reveal its location. Now moving up to the Mazi Plain. North of Eleusis, along the main carriageable road between Athens and Thebes, was the Mazi Plain, located in the Attic Boeotian borders and exploited by the Attic deme center of Oinoe and the Boeotian town of Eleutherai. The strategic significance of this mountain plain and this highway is well known, as attested by the presence of impressive fortifications at the deme site of Oinoe and the fortress above, again, Eleutherai. You see the pictures again on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, here, again, survey and excavation work done by Sylvain Fauchard, leading the Mazi archaeological project between 2013 and 2017, which is now under study for final publication, has recorded crucial data regarding the occupational history of the plain, its connectivity, settlement patterns, fortification, and pottery distribution. Again, there's also a recent preliminary study in a recent issue of Hesperia. Now, a remarkable discovery was made at the Eleutherai fortress, a die measure stamped with a signet ring of a Boeotian magistrate that is stylistically similar to the unique Boeotian electrum coinage of the 360s. The find is remarkable because the presence of the stamp suggests that it's an official measure with a seal belonging to a magistrate in charge of weights and measures. This would be the second official clay measure to be identified in Boeotia after a fragment of a liquid measure from Thespiae. Now, the stamped Eleutherai vessel suggests that we are dealing with an official dry measure, but what was the use for such a measure at Eleutherai? Official measures are commonly found in agoras, and these vessels are typically related to trading and commercial activities. In the case of Eleutherai, it's been suggested that the fortress may have been used as a customs house between Boeotia and Attica. The measure might have also been used in an agora by officials to check weights and measures and their compatibility with Boeotian standards, measure, and typically used for grain, legumes, and nuts. The Athenian agora has yielded a series of 11 similar classical dry measures in clay, some with official stamps. Now, this find also recalls a famous yet complex passage of Demosthenes mentioning the existence of border agoras, agorae ephoriae, it says in the speech against Aristocrates. where the neighboring people used to meet in old times. The interpretation of this passage presents several difficulties, and the context in which this concept is remains unclear. Some scholars believe that such markets existed on the borders of Greek polis, while others have pointed out the term does not fit with the conditions and realities of the 4th century, since Demosthenes mentioned them as being something from the past. However, it appears reasonable to believe that such markets situated in the border demes of Attica might have played this role without being named differently. Moreover, we have seen that border deme agoras situated at Rhamnous, at Deceleia, and at Eleusis. We also know about an agora at the Amphiaraeion of Oropos, which, as you see, is on the map, which was hotly disputed between Athens and Boeotia due to its position on the borders and bounced back and forth. But again, it gives us another example of an agora, and one again which is on the border. Now, after I gave an earlier version of this talk, a student, Devin Lawson, at the American School, walked up to me and said, I found another agora for you. And I said, well, where's that? And she said, oh, there's one on Salamis. And I said, well, what's the evidence for this? And she said, oh, it's a speech of Aeschines. Well, I was rather embarrassed because I did my thesis actually and wrote a book on Aeschines, and I had not noticed the passage, but she was absolutely right. It's also mentioned in Pausanias. And the recent work which has been done seems to have identified actually buildings which seem to be associated again with this. And I was also, after my talk, I was also mentioned by someone working in the Greek Archaeological Service who also alerted me to excavations in the area. So we need to actually add another one to our list. Now, again, so far we've gathered evidence for 15 agorae with solid hints in the epigraphical sources for another 3. This means that outside Attica and the Piraeus, we have at least 15 out of 100 rural demes had an agora, possibly as many as 18, if not more. Roughly speaking, we can postulate that 14 to 17% of rural demes had an agora, and we strongly believe that this number will go up in the future as additional excavation and survey work is done in the Attic countryside. Now, the kernel density analysis in GIS shows that the strongest concentrations of agora were in the mining district and in the Mesogaia. This confirms the strong link between agora, regional economic activity, the volume of trade, the exploitation of natural resources, and agricultural production. We find at least also 4 agoras in border regions and close to harbors throughout Attica, thus stressing their role as offloading and distribution centers. And you can see, again, these plotted again on the map. If we run a spatial allocation based on the cost of walking, we find that the current evidence demonstrates an interesting distribution of agora within Attica. Each agora covered an area of about 124 square kilometers with a maximum distance of 13 kilometers, which means that nobody in Attica had to walk more than 2.5 hours to reach a market. But on average, the distance between an agora and the limit of the drainage is closer to about 6 kilometers. And I added this very interesting passage from work of Ramsay McMullen, which talks about, again, gives the, in modern Syria, that farmers are quite, will easily walk for 3 or 4 hours to a market. So these distances are not kind of enormous. We also note that each market was positioned on major carriageable roads, allowing the easy flow of goods to the market and throughout Attica. This is demonstrated by an optimal regions connections analysis in GIS, in which clearly shows that the ideal connections between market use and the most important Attic carriageable roads. These routes were used for transporting and exchanging goods between regions. Good roads boosted internal commerce and facilitated both imports and exports, maritime and terrestrial. The 6 mainland roads out of Attica acted as trading routes, vibrant commercial axes, serving dozens of demes and connecting Athens with larger economic hubs such as Megara, Plataea, Thebes, Tanaka, and Oropos. Small volume trade was well served by pack animals using a variety of roads, engineered paths, and trails. Good. The presence of the border deme agora highlights the importance of international roads for commerce. The main routes radiating out of Athens were essential trading routes, and demes alongside them greatly benefit from their existence. Such important commercial axes encouraged economic interaction between the demes and other microregions, as well as neighboring polis. The road to the Amphirean crossed the borders of 9 demes. And in the 4th century, the road was pleasantly lined with inns, allowing travelers to get some rest and refreshments. The road to Oropos connected 9 demes along its route, including the border market of Deceleia, which in times of peace might have functioned as a cross-border commercial center. The sacred road to Eleusis ran across a dozen demes and 2 major sanctuaries of Aphrodite and Demeter, and the market of Eleusis itself. This was one of the busiest roads in Attica. In the Steiria Key, Odos connected dozens of demes, including the markets of the Mesogaea. The road to Inoe connected 15 deme territories before continuing on to Eleutherae, Plataea, and Thebes. The level of trade and exchanges along these axes connecting markets gives a good idea of their economic importance. And here, again, the map actually, as you see, the border demes, and also it shows, again, not only the connections with markets within Attica, but also with routes leading out of Attica to, again, to Eleutherae and into Boeotia. No, these markets were linked to other markets in Attica and places outside Attica, not only by roads, but also by the sea. In his Periplus, Pseudo-Skylox mentions 7 harbors around Attica, 1 at Salamis, 3 at Piraeus, 1 at Anaphlystos, and 2 at Thorikos, and adds that there are many other harbors in Attica. As Graham Shipley observes, there is another harbor at Sounion and a double harbor at Rhamnous. In the Demosthenic speech against Lacritus, the speaker mentions the harbor of Thebes, which is the subject of an excellent article by David Lewis. And this is not far from the Emporion in the Piraeus. Strabo also mentions this harbor and locates it near Pisitalea. Dodwell located a harbor at the mount of Mount Aegelios, and Leek placed it at Keratsini. Even if there were not harbor installations, merchants could still unload their cargoes directly onto the beaches or use tenders. The word in ancient Greek is lemboi for these small ships, and which could transfer goods from ships moored offshore. Now, the traffic along the coast was extensive, and this helps to again illustrate a passage from Xenophon's History of Greece, which reveals how when the Spartan Talutius raided the Attic coastline in 388 BCE, he captured many fishing boats and ferry boats, sailing in from the islands, and having come to Sounion, he captured merchant ships, some full of grain, others of merchandise. There was so much traffic that at Sounion, the citizens of the deme placed a tax on cargoes, and each merchant paid 7 obols, and for cargoes over 1,000 talents, merchants were to pay an additional 7 obols. So obviously, the volume of trade was quite high. Now, more evidence for the economic integration of the countryside is found in the text of the security horoi, and this is one of my pet obsessions for the last 30 years. These horoi are boundary markers which have been placed on a property that, like a workshop with enslaved people, has been pledged to security for a loan or other obligation. The formulas in these vary, and we've seen, again, 2 examples. And on the one hand, we have one which is, again, pledged to security. And the other one, we have another formula, which is Papromenon epilusi, sold on the basis of release. But they mean essentially the same thing. Now, what's interesting is that in an article I published in the Ancient Greek Economy, I collected the horoi for which the fine spot of the stone and the deme of the lender was known. For 14 security horoi, the distance between the fine spot and the deme of the lender was 10 kilometers or less. For 21 horoi, the distance was 11 to 20 kilometers, And for 15 horoi, the distance was 21 or more kilometers. What this shows is that, again, not only in terms of commerce, but also in terms of finance, Attica is actually quite well integrated, one deme to the other. Stephen Lambert, who has done an excellent job with the Hecatostai inscriptions, which record 144 sales of land. And we have the location again of the piece of property, and in many cases, we have also the buyer with his own deme. What's striking is that in many cases, the buyer is buying property in his own deme, but in many cases, the deme of the buyer is actually quite distant from the area which he's purchasing, which again shows that, again, Attica is also integrated in terms of its kind of real estate market. And also we have the anecdotal evidence that Plato, even though he was registered at Kolytos in Athens, he acquired land for the academy outside of Athens, but he also purchased land in the deme of Isistiadae near Kephysia. Okay, moving on. Now, so one finding from this study is that one should not posit a simplistic dichotomy between the urban center at Athens and the mining district around Laurion, with concentration on craft production, and the countryside of Attica devoted only to agriculture or little or no craft production. There is no doubt that many farmers traveled to Athens for a wide variety of goods, but we should not underestimate the production of non-agricultural goods in the countryside. For instance, in a very valuable study by Delphine Ackermann for the deme of Aixonides, she's located actually around the deme of Aixonides several workshops. The level of specialization of labor was clearly lower in the countryside, and several occupations were probably not represented in the demes, such as marble working, but craft production was more decentralized than has previously been assumed. One looks forward to future work in Attica, which will no doubt add more details to the sketch given here. So, Attica was exceptionally large, belonging to the exclusive club of 10 polis. This paper shows that the Athenian agora was not the only marketplace within Attica, and that farmers or demesmen were not obliged to go to Athens to sell or acquire goods. Deme agoras offered valid alternatives for products of daily need, and within 1, 2, or 3 hours walk, anybody could reach a market in Attica. At any rate, I think I just wanted to end, actually, that we shouldn't think that Attic farmers were always living in the countryside in self-sufficiency, but it's very clear that they were very interested in coming to Attica, Athens, or coming to one of the demes. And here we have again this character from Theophrastus, the country bumpkin, who is again very interested in getting a haircut, doing some singing at the baths, hammering some nails into his shoes, and while he's going in that direction, picks up some saltfish at the shop of Erchia. Again, Greek Attic farmers were not living on these isolated farmsteads, living in a position of self-sufficiency. They were deeply integrated into the market at all times. In fact, if I make a provocative statement at the end, Attic farmers in the countryside were as in love with the market as Margaret Thatcher was. On that note, I will end. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I look forward to your comments.
Thank you very much, Edward. I like the fact you brought us up to date there at the end with a nice reference. Thank you very much indeed. What a fantastically interesting picture, as you say, of this network. I mean, and the communication routes, and as you say, just the locality and the sense of place that all these markets had. I mean, how fascinating is that? My wife's father was actually from Geratea in the Mesogia, so it was interesting. It was interesting actually just thinking about that. But I see we've got a couple of questions. I'm really conscious of time, but a couple of questions. So I'll just go to those, Edward, if I may.
No problem. Go ahead.
So one from Maria Trabucco della Torretta. Mario. So Mario asks, is there evidence of other metrological standards other than weights in the places investigated? If not, and so a bit of a statement or a thought here, if not, I would be more inclined to interpret the presence of weights and coins as evidence of fiscal activity, while it makes sense that people may go to centralized agoras of their own accord out of need, it's legitimate to think that tax collection needs to rely on a complex peripheral network to enforce a collection that cannot rely on goodwill alone. So a bit of a question there. First of all, and thank you, Mario, for then your shared thought. So the first bit of the question there, Edward, was: is there evidence of other metrological standards other than weights in the places excavated or investigated? Sorry.
Well, I think there are a few of the in terms of the weights. The one from Eleftherai is a container. And as far as that goes, I don't know. The other things we also have is something we often found in other agoras with seicomata, which are kind of liquid measures. I don't know of any seicomata actually. As far as collecting taxes is done kind of in a different way. They don't use these agoras. They have other functions, but they're not used for collecting taxes. Taxes are farmed out. One of the main taxes, we do know there was a tax on goods going in and out of the Piraeus of 2%. We don't know about any taxes being collected actually in some of these other harbors, and we don't know, and I don't think there's any reason to think that these deem centers were being used for collection of taxes, unless possibly there's a mention of something called an agorastikon in an inscription, but it's not sure exactly what that refers to. So thank you very much for the question.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mario, as well. And Jane, just a comment, and just from Jane Lawrence. Thank you, Jane. Thank you for a fascinating talk. I'm interested in the find of loom weights in the agora Halai Aixonides. Were loom weights, to the question, were loom weights found in other agorae? Question mark. How do you think we should interpret these finds? Is it a sale of loom weights, or is it textile production for sale by individuals, or is it a civic production centre? Question. So yeah, so lots of thoughts. So Jane's just wondering, how should we interpret them, I guess, Edward?
That is a very good question, actually, about loom weights, because we know that these are being produced, and they also are for sale. And there's no question about this, but it's interesting. I've always been looking for a good kind of summary essay of loom weights, because you find them in all many archaeological sites, and you go into museums and you see them all over the place. But that is a good question. Obviously, if you get a concentration of them, one is tempted to say that they're from a loom, and they say that basically if we have 20 to 40 loom weights, we're probably dealing with a loom. There's a very famous house actually at Olynthus where they found something like 270 loom weights, I think, which seems to be a kind of larger scale production. So again, that's a good question. Again, as you can see, the reporting on these sites is somewhat variable. And again, I think the Icarion is one of the more frustrating ones, because in earlier times, they were looking for certain types of finds, and things like loom weights were not sometimes reported. In some cases, some of these things in earlier periods were just kind of thrown out. So hopefully, with more advanced and more thorough techniques in the future, we'll have a better idea. But that is a good question. On the other hand, I want to come back to a point which does reinforce it. We tend to think of textile production as being concentrated in the center of Athens, with people coming to Athens and then buying textiles. But I think this would show, and thank you very much for emphasizing this, that there was probably a good deal of textile production going on in the countryside for local needs. So thank you very much for that question.
No, it makes sense, doesn't it? As you say, especially when you think of all of the evidence there. One from Richard Martin here, and perhaps we should make this the last one, if that's okay, Richard and everyone. Just I'm conscious of time. So Richard's question: there's an interesting overlap with the number brackets about 14 and location of deemed theatres, as documented by Jessica Parga. Do you think this is just a matter of population density, or are there acknowledged multi-deem regional centres structuring the landscape?
That's an excellent question, and I should have mentioned Jess Bogga's very interesting, again, study of the Dean theaters. And again, there's this study of cold, which is called actually, I think it's theater and agora. That's a really good question. And it may be the case that, as Bogga suggested, that some of these theaters are actually serving kind of several demes. That may be probably the case in these also some of these agoras, that they're not just serving one deme, but they're actually serving several demes. And as you can see kind of on the map, this I think is just a question we're just going to have to wait kind of for more excavation. There's even though there's been a great deal of survey work, for instance, British School's done excellent survey work in Laconia over the past several decades. There's been less survey work. And what's interesting is that the impetus for many of these, the discovery of many of these deme centers was actually, again, by rescue excavations, really for the time of the Olympics. Especially in the case of the Mesogaia. And that's why, again, we have, again, more evidence in the Mesogaia. And we haven't had, for instance, Deceleia has not attracted the same sort of attention in some of the other areas. But Rhamnous, because, of course, it's a very prominent site. But one wonders, again, if then, again, with the work that Sylvian's done in the Mazi Plain has also given us. But again, we'll just hope that in the future there's more work is going to be done, like, for instance, the work of Luke Madsen at Deceleia.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I will close it after this question. Maria, you just got your question in, so I'll just take this one as well, Professor Harris, if that's okay. Apart from saying thank you for the talk, so this is Maria Xanthou. In an article of mine, so Maria speaking, in an article of mine published in 2011 entitled Contextualizing Dikaiopolis' Persona, I argued on the interaction between Aristophanes' use of the contrast between rural and urban as omnipresent and interweaving the plot of the Acharnians. In the light of your presentation, would you like to comment on whether we have an overlap rather than a contrast?
I'm not exactly sure. What is the overlap which is being suggested? In other words, between the literary kind of, approach to the text and what we're finding in the archaeology. I think what some people have posited this great kind of gap between the countryside kind of and the city. And obviously, I mean, when you get something like the Theophrastus characters when he's talking about Negroikos, there obviously are some sort of cultural differences between the two. I'm not going to minimize that. But the main thing is they're not as disconnected. There is a great deal of kind of communication kind of going back and forth. And what's also interesting, which I didn't mention about the Acharnians, is that people have used that passage in the Acharnians to say, that the average Greek farmer was not interested actually in the market. But yet, if you go to the end of the play, Dikaiopolis, one thing that he does, he creates his own personal market. He loves the market. So I think that this idea that you have kind of farmers in the countryside averse to the market, as opposed to the town dwellers who like the market, I think that's a rather misleading dichotomy, and we can leave it there.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I've just noticed there was one other question in the chat, was all around the topic of metics. So were all of these markets dominated by metics, or the markets around Sounion, could they have been a notable percentage of slaves or citizens? I don't know if there's a quick answer to that, Professor.
There is a quick answer. And actually, what I would do is I just published an article. It's at my Academia EDU website on the Phialae. And it's very clear that in the Phialae inscriptions, which have nothing to do with manumissions, but are very, very valuable evidence for metics. Most of the metics in those are in 3 demes, all in Piraeus and in demes basically around Athens. There are hardly any metics at all listed as resident in the countryside. So I can give you a quick answer to that.
Fascinating. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you for fielding all of those enthusiastic questions to your talk. But thank you. Well, I think it just... I just think it remains to me, I'm conscious of time and, Professor Harris, your time as well as everyone else is dialing in. That's been such an amazing talk. I mean, I learned so much, as I always do, the connectivity, the fact of all this bustling life out across the, the whole area around Athens as well. Fantastic. Thank you so much indeed. And also different types of evidence, we talked about epigraphy, we talked about the archaeology and the literary as well. So that's been really fascinating too. But just to thank you for an amazing talk in our series. And again, just to thank all of you for dialing in as well and for showing interest. I will say again, BSA is a charity. We put on these talks, and Professor Harris and similar people generously give their time so that we can encourage support of the BSA. So please do be encouraged with the links in the chat to donate. Thank you very much, Flora, for putting that in again. And just to say, that's obviously we're sitting here on the 9th of December. That'll be the last one this side of New Year. So wishing everyone a good break when we get there, and looking forward to more talks in the series after the break. But Professor Harris, thank you so much. What a great end to our year. So wonderful.
Thank you
very much.
Everyone. Yorgos, thank you very much indeed. And best wishes, everyone. And feel free to dial off now. And
Thank you all.
We'll close the webinar. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Thank you, Professor Harris, again. Wonderful.